Expectations are high for the Buffalo Bills tight ends in 2025. Will they deliver? I'm breaking that down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time for a tight end conversation. We've done this for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Today is tight ends. And what I want to do is explore the dynamics of the position group through three different lenses. The first lens is why I'm excited for the Bills tight ends. The second lens is why I'm concerned about the Bills tight ends. And then we will close with what I'm curious about regarding the Buffalo Bills tight ends in 2025. Let's start with why I'm excited. And the number one reason is Dalton Kincaid. I know there are a lot of people that are doubting Dalton Kincaid, that don't believe in Dalton Kincaid. I still do. And I think he's proven a lot over his first two NFL seasons for a guy that didn't really start playing football until his last year of high school. There's a lot of upward mobility for where Dalton Kincaid's impact and production can go. And let's not forget what he's already proven. As a rookie, he set a new Buffalo Bills franchise record for catches by a tight end in a season with 73. That was a record held by Pete Metzelaars for 30 years. Also the second most yards ever by a tight end in a single season of franchise history with 673. And it wasn't just good relative to the Bills. As a rookie, Dalton Kincaid was 7th in catches and 10th in yards among the entire NFL at the tight end position. Oh, by the way, according to the Fantasy Points data suite, he was number 4 in route win rate among NFL tight ends as a rookie. By all accounts, a very good rookie season. Then you get to year 2 and the expectations are high. Stephon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. Lots of vacated targets. Dalton Kincaid, the first round pick from the year prior. Expectations are for him to come in and catch a lot of footballs. And he didn't. But he still proved a lot. Was number 8 in route win rate among NFL tight ends. Number 4 in yards after catch per reception. Number 6 in missed tackles forced per reception. So while the volume statistics didn't land where we wanted them to last year, and certainly there's a level of disappointment that extends to the drop in the postseason that ultimately ended the Bills' chances of going to the Super Bowl. He's 2 years into his career and has proven to be a top 10 route runner and a top 10 yards after catch guy at the tight end position. That was always the appeal with Dalton Kincaid, was the overall receiving profile. It's an exciting receiving skill set that in some ways has been proven in the NFL. Now, year 3 is a big year. And it's been a big year for a lot of Bills players. Spencer Brown, Dawson Knox, Josh Allen. Just to name a few guys that came into their own in year 3. Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford. You've seen so many different Bills players really put it together in their third season. Don't be surprised if it's Dalton Kincaid. Leave a little room in your heart and in your mind for Dalton Kincaid fulfilling the promise and the excitement that so many had when he was drafted in the first round. Another reason I'm excited about Dalton Kincaid in particular is how his role evolved from 23 to 24. His average depth of target increased by 2 yards. There was much more of a down the field profile for what the Bills asked Dalton Kincaid to do. And the Bills want to throw the ball to Dalton Kincaid. Last season in 2024, he had the highest target rate per route run of any NFL tight end that ran at least 200 routes. The Bills want to throw him the ball. They gave him more chances down the field. Proven separator. Proven yards after catch guy. Now it's time for it all to come together, which includes better chemistry with Josh Allen to be the player that he was drafted to be. That's number one, Dalton Kincaid. Number two is Jackson Hawes. I think Jackson Hawes can elevate the blocking role of the third tight end, which has an impact on offense, of course, but also on special teams, as we're expecting more returns this year. Jackson Hawes' blocking skills will help in the return game in addition to from scrimmage. And you have a cost control player in that role in Jackson Hawes, assuming he fulfills the promise for the next 4 seasons. And for a Bills offense that likes to go heavy personnel groupings, 6 offensive linemen, 2-3 tight ends, a fullback, they'll use all those things. If the Bills do decrease the rate in which they use the 6 offensive linemen, and that's assumed by Jackson Hawes, you do create more of a passing threat in some of your personnel groupings that are more bigger people. So I'm excited about Jackson Hawes and how he can elevate the tight end 3 role in the blocking piece, especially because his ability to inline preserves so many key elements of your offense, assuming either Knox or Kincaid goes down. If Knox goes down, Jackson Hawes, from an inline perspective, you feel like can handle that job. If Kincaid goes down, Hawes can do the Knox stuff, and Knox can go do the Kincaid stuff. So I think it's a very useful player to add to the mix. And lastly, number 3, in terms of reasons I'm excited, it's the overall makeup of the room. I think it's a good-looking group. You've got a young, high upside receiving threat. You've got an established inline veteran in Dawson Knox that also has the ability to be flexed around. And then you have that true Y tight end in Jackson Hawes that, as I just went through, can preserve whatever offensive elements you want if either Kincaid or Knox gets injured. So there's plenty to be excited about as it relates to this tight end room. But there are also reasons to be concerned. And a lot of that is rooted in the trajectory of Dalton Kincaid. And I'll get real honest about all that here on the other side of it. So folks, be sure to stick with me. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Well, folks, welcome back. We're continuing our discussion today on the Buffalo Bills tight ends, and we're now going to focus in on what I'm concerned about. And I've certainly painted a rosy picture of Dalton Kincaid, and I'm excited for Dalton Kincaid, and I maintain everything I've ever said about Dalton Kincaid. But he is also the reason I'm concerned, and for different reasons. 3 different reasons why I am concerned about Dalton Kincaid. The leading item is the chemistry dynamic that exists with Josh Allen. You've heard me talk about this. And it's not just Josh Allen throwing inaccurate footballs to Dalton Kincaid, right? There's blame for Dalton Kincaid as well. I'm sure the injuries that he had last season affect some of the consistency with his movement, which maybe threw off some of the timing by a tick. So don't come at me and say, Joe, you're bashing the NFL MVP, saying that he doesn't throw accurate passes to Dalton Kincaid. Well, I can think that Josh Allen's the greatest thing that's ever happened to the Buffalo Bills and tell you repeatedly that he's the best player in the NFL, but also acknowledge that his chemistry with Dalton Kincaid needs to improve. And that goes to both sides. But let me give you the numbers because they're real. Among the 41 NFL tight ends to run at least 200 routes in 2024, only 69% of Kincaid's targets were catchable, the lowest rate in the league. When targeted 10 or more yards down the field, Kincaid's catchable target rate was 37%. Again, the lowest in the league. So when I look back on this year that was disappointing for Dalton Kincaid, the thing that I keep coming back to is how explainable it all is. There's a lot of variables in place, but it's easy to find the context and understand it. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't need to improve and it doesn't all have to come together this year, but you should be able to understand it. And like I said, year 3 has been a great year for a lot of Bills players. It was a big adjustment for Kincaid and Allen last year. Stepping into an even more prominent role, more down the field opportunities, more opportunities in general, expectations existed, and they fell short. Doesn't mean the Bills' offense wasn't really good. You can feel like Dalton Kincaid didn't meet expectations, and we can simultaneously say, you know what, I think that was the best offense the Bills have ever put on the field. It can all be true. But for this Kincaid-Allen connection to be what it was designed to be, the guys got to get on the same page, and we need more consistency when Allen targets Kincaid. For whatever reason it is. I'm sure it's a little bit of everything. Number 2, in terms of what I'm concerned about, it's Dalton Kincaid's health. Now, my understanding is that he is healthy, but I can look back at the last 3 years and find a good amount of stuff that suggests that there's some injury concerns here. Coming out of his last year in college in 2022, he did miss 1 game with a shoulder injury, and then he had a back fracture that required surgery, and he missed the combine because of it. His rookie season in 23, he had a concussion. He played through a shoulder and a finger injury, and then, of course, we know last year had the PCL injury in his left knee, and in his right knee, he had that bursitis deal. So he's got stuff, right? And we want to see him healthy and optimized to play the best football he possibly can. And being available and being healthy to perform is important. So we need Dalton Kincaid to be healthy. And I think that's probably a big part of the play strength conversation. It's, of course, there's benefits to him getting stronger and how that would help him as a route runner and as a blocker and at the catch point with the ball in his hands. All those things will be helpful. But when you watch Dalton Kincaid play, he's a very physical player. That doesn't mean he's a powerful player, but he's physical. He mixes it up. Wants to lower his shoulder. He wants to be highly competitive. And I think for him to play that style, more mass, more strength will help him. The last thing that I have down in terms of items I'm concerned about for the Bills tight ends in 2025 is gaining the right clarity for the Bills' decision on whether or not to pick up Dalton Kincaid's fifth-year option. That is a choice the Bills will have to make after the season. So I think the deadline is early May, like a little bit after the 2026 draft. So this is a key year for the Bills to gain the information that they need on Kincaid that will tell them if they want to go ahead and commit to him for 2027 or not. Now, the Bills could, and it happens across the league, where you don't pick up a fifth-year option, but you still sign a contract extension with the player. That's certainly possible. And maybe next season's really good, but not great, and the Bills want to let it play out. They could certainly do that. But it would be nice to feel like you watch Kincaid in 2025 and have the clarity needed to make that decision. I was texting with Greg Thompson of Cover One, does a great job with salary cap stuff. And I asked him, have you taken the time yet to project out what the cost of Dalton Kincaid's fifth-year option is going to be? And unless he's an original ballot Pro Bowler, Greg projects that number to be around $11 million. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how do you not know the answer? Well, that's because it's based on so many different variables, including snap percentage, whether or not they've been a Pro Bowler. And then from there, it's like taking the average of the 3rd through 20th salaries at the position. Like, there's so many different things that go into it. But I think we can safely estimate that it would be around $11 million in 2027 if the Bills do pick up the fifth-year option and Kincaid is not an original ballot Pro Bowl selection. So get the information you need this year that will inform that decision properly. So what am I concerned about? Chemistry with Kincaid and Allen, Dalton Kincaid's availability, and gaining the right information to make the right decision on the fifth-year option. All right, coming up next, I want to get into what I'm curious about, which will lead to, I think, some interesting conversations on Dawson Knox. So we'll do that here in just a moment. Be sure to stick with me. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to the ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes all of that possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the start of the game, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. And I love those seat views. You get them right on the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you're going to be and what the view will be. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, welcome back. Let's get into things I'm curious about for the Bills tight ends in 2025. Number one is, how much volume do they get in the passing game? Last season, the Bills tight ends caught 72 passes for 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. Those 72 catches ranked 22nd. Those 800 yards ranked 21st. And the 4 tight ends ranked 19th. So around the 20th most productive tight end room in the NFL. Okay, so slightly below average. The reality here, though, is you have a lot invested. You've got a first-round pick in Dalton Kincaid. You've got a paid veteran in Dawson Knox. And you traded up for both players in the draft. So in terms of draft capital invested, you have a first, a third, and 3 fourth-round picks. The Bills parted with a fourth-round pick to move up for Kincaid. They parted with 2 fourth-round picks to move up for Knox. You've got the 7th most cap space in the league committed to tight ends in 2025. So the 2 big resources that you have in the NFL, draft capital and cap space. You got a good amount invested here in these players. Probably more of an investment than you'd like to see for a tight end group that was about 20th in terms of production. So how do you get more out of the group? That's a good question. That's something Joe Brady's got to figure out. But you want to feel like you get appropriate impact and production for the investment that you've made, and the Bills have a lot invested here. So that's number one. How much volume? How do you capitalize on the strong investments that you've made in this group? Number two, in terms of things I'm curious about, is Dawson Knox and what the role is going to be. I think we have an idea. In the 2 seasons that Kincaid has been part of the team, 33 targets last year, 36 in 2023. I'm guessing it'll probably be similar this year. Now, one thing I'll say about Dawson Knox is he's the longest tenured skill player on the team. It shows up in the catchable target rate. His catchable target rate was 81% last year. Second on the team, only behind Khalil Shakir at 85%. So we talk about these chemistry issues with Keon Coleman and especially Dalton Kincaid. Color me not surprised that the 2 players that Josh Allen had the highest percentage of catchable targets to are the 2 guys in Dawson Knox and Khalil Shakir that have been the longest tenured with him on the team. It should give you a lot of encouragement for where all of that's going to go. But is there a case for more Dawson Knox? Pretty successful whenever they target him. Got him going down the field a little bit. You know, he's got some yards after catch skill. He's highly competitive. Maybe 50 targets would be good for Dawson Knox instead of hanging out in the mid-30s. I'm curious there. Obviously, you got a few bucks tied up in Dawson Knox, and the Bills paid him, and then they wind up drafting Dalton Kincaid. And yes, Dawson Knox is overpaid for the role that he gives, but he took the pay cut, and then in exchange, he got more guaranteed money and locked in for more years. My prediction on Dawson Knox is that he's a Bill for life. I think he'll sign another contract to stay in Buffalo. I don't think he'll play for another team. I think the coaching staff and the locker room, the front office appreciate Dawson Knox for so many things. Leadership, his presence, what he does do on the field. It's not easy to appreciate a guy that gets 30-something targets and mostly blocks, but he plays a lot of snaps. And he's a key piece of foundationally how the Bills run their offense. He's an important part of the scheme. I can't tell you how important it is with exciting receiving metrics, but he matters. Is he overpaid? Yes. But at least he's not as overpaid as he was because that contract has been reworked. And you do see some of these teams paying tight end twos more and more money. Look at what was it the Niners? They pay, or I can't remember which team they played. Luke Farrell, a decent amount of money. Josh Oliver is a tight end two. John Bates. Tight end twos are getting north of $5 million, $7 million a year. Knox is at about 9. So yeah, he's still on the high end of tight end twos, but it's not as egregious as it was at 14 million. So my call on Knox is that I think he's going to be around. I would not be preparing yourself for the Bills to not have Dawson Knox on the team anytime soon. The last thing I'm curious about is Zach Davidson's future. I think that Jackson Hawes will beat him out for tight end 3. And then Zach Davidson, who's become a bit of a fan favorite. He's a high energy guy at training camp. He's flashy in preseason. I think we always romanticize about the underdog stories and root for these types of players. It's easy to do. But he's been with the Bills since 2022. He misses 2023 with a knee injury. And of course, he comes back in 2024 and he's on the practice squad. Is it now or never in Buffalo? I think barring an injury, I don't think there's a path for him to making this roster. He turns 27 in July. I'm curious, again, assuming the top 3, Kincaid, Knox, and Hawes, are all healthy, I am curious what Zach Davidson does. I'm sure the Bills would love to have him back on the practice squad, where he would then be one snap away from being on the active roster, having a role for a team that he's been with since 2022. Or does he think he's got a better chance somewhere else to carve out a role? And I think you've seen that with certain players, like a Quentin Morris, for example. Now, how many years can you come back in the same role and have limited opportunity before you maybe go somewhere else? So I'm curious to see what happens with Zach Davidson if everyone's healthy, he's released, and he has the choice of the Bills practice squad or someone else's practice squad. Should be interesting to find that out. So there you have it, folks. All the variables that I'm curious about and concerned about and excited about for the Bills tight ends in 2025. That's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Thanks for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.